Hey everyone, today I'd like to introduce Chris Russell. He's a professional working actor and he also writes screenplays, directs films, and coaches actors for camera and in how to network and break into the film and television world. Chris, thank you so much for being here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Chris Russell. I think you just really summed up me better than I could have done in a few sentences. So I might take that log line and just put it on my website moving forward. That was very concise and tight, so I appreciate that. I've been a working actor for about 3 years now. I kind of quit my job on a whim. I was working as a hotel doorman, and that was very much a part of my identity. I had like a blog about it. I had a Twitter about it. I made a web series about it. It got pretty close in terms of me like pitching the show to like networks and stuff, and it did pretty well, but it didn't go all the way. And it got me sort of passionate about really wanting to pursue a career in TV and film. And I personally, I prefer to write my own stuff and produce my own stuff, but in the film and television world, I do pretty okay as an actor. Um, I recently did an episode of Wu Tang: An American Saga. I did 2 episodes of The Deuce last year. I did a spot on Law and Order SVU. Before I joined SAG, I did a ton of industrials and commercials, like non-union commercials. I did a lot of crime reenactment shows. I play a cop all the time, which is funny because like anybody who grew up with me, I mean, I grew up on Staten Island around guys who eventually became New York cops. And when they look at me and they go, yeah, you're a cop, really? But the rest of the world is like, yeah, no, that guy's totally a cop. I could see him as a cop. It's just funny how the film and television world especially works, is
Yeah.
how people see you and how you kind of perceive yourself. So my philosophy, and in addition, I do teach an on-camera class, and my big thing in the on-camera class is seeing how the world sees you and understanding that and using that to market yourself while staying true to what's underneath. So the philosophy that I kind of embed into my students is this, but also this. Goofy, but authoritative. You know,
Really quick, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't know if you have like a laptop, but I think sometimes when you hold it at a certain point, you're covering the microphone, so it just kind of like
oh,
muffles
really?
the voice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the like mic is like in the area where you hold it for some reason. So I just
Got it.
wanted
I
to,
will. I will. Is this better?
yeah, that definitely sounds fine.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, so you're saying all about how the industry sees you as a specific type, and you teach your on-camera acting class. How do you actually like help actors figure out what their type is? And I do have a specific question that an actor has asked me that I'll ask you in a minute. But just like, what's your process for that, and what do you recommend actors do if they want to find their own type?
Well, in my class, like I do a lot of like cold read monologue exercises, and I plop them right in front of the camera, and I have the rest of the class sort of do this gauntlet of adjectives. I try to do adjectives, and I avoid adjectives like attractive and sexy and handsome and stuff, and I really try to get into vulnerable, guarded, like those types of things. Those like really specific, really specific words that really get to the core of someone instead of this surfacey, like
So rather than like their physical appearance, you're talking like words that describe their inner emotion and personality essence.
yeah, inner emotion, their essence. I think essence is a stronger word. I every class after the exercise, I have, to keep the whole group sort of engaged, I have people write down specific TV shows that they could see this person being on, specific roles they can play. So the class itself becomes a communal experience where you're not only like getting all this feedback, but you're working with other actors, and it becomes a really nice, tight, intimate environment. And you learn a lot about yourself. And, I'm not unique in that I feel like a lot of on-camera classes do that. But my big thing is this, but also this. Like
Mhm.
that's the huge thing for me.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that I had mentioned that I have a slightly more specific question regarding type, and an actor had mentioned to me once, they said, you know, I really feel like I'm not a type, or I'm not like, I can't be categorized, or if I can, there's very few people who are like me. And so therefore I'm not easily castable. There aren't many roles for me, and casting directors aren't willing to look past that, despite what comes out of my mouth, my talent, or my experience. So what would you say to an actor who believes that they're sort of like super boxed in, or they can't figure it out?
I mean, I think that that's an amazing advantage. If you know, if you're not boxed into one certain thing, it's trial by error, doing a lot of things until somebody captures you and sees, and then wants to flush it out. I mean, look at actors like Judah Friedlander, or someone like Titus on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I'm sure that they went through gauntlets of 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 going in for certain types of roles, and casting directors going, "Oh my God, this person is so interesting, but I don't know what to do with them yet."
Mhm.
And I think that yes, it'll be a tough road to get there, but I guarantee you there will be a role out there if you stick with it and you know stick it out.
Yeah, I think that that's really good advice, is like really, you know, see how people are and then kind of embrace that. But what would you say if somebody's like, well, because I actually was doing a call with an actor just recently, and their whole thing was, I have been, I keep on getting boxed into this transgender type of role, and that's who I am as a person, but I don't want to sort of play those parts. I'm actually getting people calling me each day asking me to be in my project. And I sort of recommended, like, I'm like, well, if you don't want to do those roles, just keep raising your day rate. But, you know, like, what would you say to something like that?
Well, create your own content. That's first and foremost. I mean, for me, the big motivation behind why I continue to crank out my own stuff is because I feel like I am a little bit pigeonholed in my own work in the industry. It's always, some smart ass cop, or, like a blue collar person with some sort of attitude. Because I have a New York accent, I'm a native New Yorker, and those, casting directors see that, and producers see that. So that's why I get cast in those parts. I mean, if you look at my actor reel, 80% of the stuff that's in there is some sort of like civil servant kind of thing. I'm very, very, very grateful for the work, and I will continue to do the work. But to break away from that, I think that it's on the actor, especially now, because it's so much easier to create your own content and create quality content. Then you got to maybe grab a writing partner, or even just sit down and write something and start producing and fleshing out your own stuff. And then that could be used. I mean, then that gets added to your reel, and it adds another element to what it is that you can do. And the casting directors who are seeking you out, who I mean, if this person is being reached out to by casting directors and producers, then they can in turn say, well, hey, take that job, and then later on say, hey, I created this new reel, I created this new show, check out this other thing that I can do.
Mhm.
It takes time. I mean, I don't think that, character actors who are able to do all these different types of roles jump out of the gate and are presented with those opportunities right away.
Yeah.
I just I was listening to a podcast, and they brought up Brad Pitt.
Mhm.
Brad Pitt is, one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, so it's a little bit of an unfair comparison. But they had said that Brad Pitt was a character actor in a leading man's body, which I believe. But those early roles that he had, they were these sort of heart-throbby teen, and eventually, as he earned his keep in Hollywood, he was able to experiment and pick and choose and take different things, and then establish himself as more of a character actor.
Yeah.
So I would say to anybody who's feeling pigeonholed, yeah, it's going to happen to everyone, but stick with it and again, create your own stuff. We're in an era where feature films are being shot on iPhones.
Mhm. It's true. I mean, I definitely, I like that, you have to sort of use that to your advantage. I would say, like, most people start out, like you're saying, with, like, not being sure. Step two in your career is like being sure. You're like, all right, this is how people are seeing me. This is what I'm getting cast as. And you keep on kind of working with that, earning money. And then, like you're saying, step three would be like, expanding your range and offering these other things. And one of those ways to do that is by shooting stuff. So that's excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
That would be
Um,
my advice. I mean, that's how I've been doing it, and
yeah. Well,
it's been working. Slowly but surely, it's been working.
Um, I'd actually, before I move on to the next question that I have here, I just kind of like to expand on how your own film directing and writing work has sort of helped you. I mean, obviously, you're saying that it's helped you add to your reel, but besides allowing actors to add to their reel and expand their type and everything, are there other reasons that actors should consider, like saying, even just learning how to direct? Do you think that that can help their acting ability? Do you think that directing or doing their own projects can help them network with people? What are some other reasons that they might want to consider that?
Well, I mean, I think having a better, you could always have a better understanding as to how, a film set is run, and getting a perspective on, being a director, even just being a writer and being, sensitive to the writer's words. And I feel like wearing different hats and seeing different perspectives on things gives you a stronger skill set as an actor on set. You know what I mean? Like, I tell my actors in my on-camera classes who are very, very new, who have never really been on a set before, who have never been on camera before, to do background work on like major TV shows and films, because background work mostly sucks, but you're getting paid to get an education on who is who on a set. Who's the AD? What's an AD? What's a PA? What's this? Like, what's a gaffer? What are all these things? Like, oh shit, is this what the pressure is to come in and be a day player and say 3 lines and they expect you to do it and be perfect and get out? You know what I mean? Like, just to get different perspectives on just how the machine works is crucial, I think.
I've actually heard something from actors, which I'm curious to hear your take on, and where they've been worried, and they're like, I don't want to ever work doing a background acting role because I'm afraid I'll get boxed into only being able to do background work. Is that untrue?
Well, background work is like catering. You can take it or leave it. Like if you want to work, that's why so many actors do catering, because it's like I could work 1 shift a week or I could work 6 shifts a week, and I can cancel and I can take it or leave it. And it's the freedom of not having to be pigeonholed into working in a restaurant. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can do, there are people who are career background people and that's what they do, and bless them if that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. It wasn't for me. Like, I did it a few times, and I got my SAG waivers. I got featured on a show. And then that SAG waiver led to me being able to get my SAG card for the Deuce. And I've been SAG for, a year and a half now, and I will never go back. It's amazing, yeah, I think it's hard to get, I think it's your choice whether or not you want to get pigeonholed into that. And it is work, and it is work on a film set, and it could be easier to get sucked into the philosophy of, okay, I can make 160 a day doing this, or I can make 120 working in a restaurant and dealing with customers and doing all that, yeah, I mean, it's just, it depends on the person. I think it can be hard. It's hard to get sucked in the way people think that they can get sucked in.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so let's see. Another question from an actor says, I just graduated. After just graduating, where do I start? How do I make myself stand out when I submit for jobs and potential representation? So what would be your perspective as an actor coach? If someone just graduated, are they ready for representation? Do you feel like they need to just get experience working on smaller projects?
Yeah, I mean, I like to do sports analogies, so I'll do a sports analogy, and if it's too much, I could do another analogy. But like, if you graduate college and you're a baseball player and you get drafted by a team, you don't go right to the majors. You start out in single A in some small town somewhere in the Midwest, and you work your way up. And if you don't perform, or if you phone it in, then you don't get to move up, or sometimes you phase yourself completely out. And if you persist and you work hard and you live up to your expectations, then you get called up to the majors and you have a career. I don't think that it's realistic I mean, there are obviously exceptions, but I don't think it's realistic to say I just graduated from high school. Great. Let's audition for Law and Order SVU. Let me get an agent. I think it takes time. And I think do the student films, do everything, get a backstage profile and even just film a little scene with you and your friend and an iPhone, like get some stuff on tape to have for student filmmakers to see, and eventually like you'll build a reel from that. Do the reenactment shows, do industrials, do everything that you can to put stuff on film, and then maybe it's time to start like getting an agent. I'm speaking strictly from my own experience. I did one-on-one, and I did a lot of pay to plays, and I kind of blindly just met with any manager and agent that I could without really taking into consideration like what their clientele is, like who they're submitting and what their reach is. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that does take research as well.
Yeah.
And if you ask 20 actors who have an agent, I guarantee you're going to get 5 different answers as to how they got their agent.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like at this point doing these interviews, I've sort of already asked like 20 actors, and every single one has said a totally different thing. Just like
I met my agent at one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you talk about dating. It's like, oh, we met on OkCupid. Oh, we met in a bar. Oh, our friend introduced us. And those are all realistic things. I know somebody who was bartending, and somebody from an agency was sitting at a bar, and he was serving them, and they were having a conversation, and that's his commercial agent now. Like it's all arbitrary.
So really, in terms of that question that we're talking about, whether they're graduating from high school or college, it doesn't matter too much. The most important thing, as I kind of gather it from you, is get your materials together, like your reel, good headshot, and then you want to start building the resume up and acting on those free or like really, really low pay projects to start and build the experience and then slowly work your way up, right?
Totally. And also take into consideration how many, this is going to sound discouraging, but like how many actors are leaving school at 22 and competing for the same roles,
Yeah.
And
luckily, most of them aren't listening to this interview.
I mean,
well, we'd like them to, but
I'm just being as honest and as blunt as I can, and I feel like that is more of a service to actors than
Yeah.
But that's also something to take into consideration, and again, it's just patience and persistence, and like you said, gathering as much material as you possibly can. Like, you're gonna. I mean, obviously, don't do anything that you feel is unsafe, but do a low budget, crappy thing for no pay, and maybe invest a few days into it. And you're not going to use 7 minutes of it on your actor's reel. You're going to use 30 seconds tops. Mm-hmm. So if you take the risk that maybe I'll get 30 seconds of material to do this thing, then it's worth the risk. Then it's worth the time. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot worse things you could be doing with your time. You know what I mean? Like, so.
All right, let's move on to the next question. So this person actually says, my biggest struggle in my career at the moment is that I don't feel like I have enough time for everything. Yeah. I'm heading into my last semester of undergrad, and I can't help but feel as though the perfect time to start taking my career seriously and start auditioning every week is after I graduate, since I'll have a little bit more time and won't be working on I don't know what that means, but won't be working on like classes and stuff. But will it ever be the right time, and how can I basically manage my time? This is what they're asking.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what that person's schedule is, and I don't know when your time is. Like, I mean, look at like Olivia Colman. I'm just like someone who, like, I'm sure she's been around for a longer time than I know, but she's, just now having this renaissance. She just won an Oscar. She just on the show Fleabag. Like, I'm sure that in college she probably had a moment where she was like, "Oh my God, I don't know when my time is going to be. I don't know how much longer I have in this game. I don't know if I'm doing the right things." And then, like I was just like Gene Hackman was a doorman in his 30s before he was an actor. So was I. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to compare myself to Gene Hackman's career, but like I do believe that a time will come. And as I'm 35, as I've gotten older, more roles have come my way. And A, I think that comes with experience. B, that comes with reputation. And C, that just comes with, there are probably more roles of a police officer pulling someone over than there are, I don't know, a college student. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
just
it makes sense. I mean, I think that what you're saying about like, because people do have a tendency to freak out about those sorts of things. It's like I have no time and I'm super stressed, and then what happens is they're not thinking clearly. But if they take a second to realize like what you just said, which is this is happening right now. It's like a moment, but it's not going to be like this forever. So, calm down a little bit and think about things more clearly. And a lot of times I feel that people might find that that 80-20 rule, which I'm sure you've heard of. If not, I'm going to explain it anyway for people listening here. But the 80-20 rule basically states that it was actually found by this guy Pareto. It's called Pareto's principle, and he was finding that out in fields of crops, about 20% of the crops yielded 80% of the actual harvest, and the remaining 80% barely gave anything. And they found that sort of those numbers are holding true for all different things in life, whether it's like the clothing that you wear, like you probably only use 20% of your wardrobe 80% of the time, and the other 80% of the stuff just kind of sits. And it's also like the things that you spend time working on. So like 20% of the things that you actually do give you 80% of the results. And the other 80% of the stuff you're spending your time on barely gives you any results, only 20%.
I believe that.
And it's really interesting. We find that like a lot of people, when they actually look at what they're doing, they find that they've sort of been, spending their time sometimes in the wrong place. And if they do the really, really hard like analysis of it, they find that they can actually cut out some stuff to free up time to focus on things that matter more. You can read a lot more about it in the book, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, but it's just a really interesting principle. And it's honestly like I found it to be really true. A while, maybe like almost a year ago now, I cut out about 80% of the stuff I was doing. And I realized like I spend that extra free time focusing on that smaller 20% that was actually producing results. And I've definitely seen like my business has been growing more and I'm actually less stressed. So it might be something to consider.
I think that's wonderfully sound advice, and I might take that with me when I teach my class tonight. That's really cool.
Yeah, nice.
I totally agree with that, and I think that another thing just to kind of piggyback on, it's not exactly the same thing, but I think it's a similar principle. That beating yourself up over procrastinating, quote unquote procrastinating, and not, like yesterday, for example, like I wanted to just do work in a coffee shop for a few hours, and I ended up spending 4 hours there, and I didn't write a word. I didn't write a word, and I left pissed, like God, what the fuck did I just do in there for 4 hours? Yeah. But then like I thought about it, I'm like, well, no, I did this, I sent this email, I reached out to this person, I submitted for this thing, in between dicking around on Facebook and reading ESPN articles and whatever. But I had a productive 4 hours. I did a lot in those 4 hours. I just didn't do what I sat down to do, which as a writer, 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. For me at least. But then, and I think about that a lot, like, whenever I'm feeling blocked or this, that, and the other. And I've written a lot. and even if it's journaling for a little while, and you know what I mean, like it's something. And when that idea comes, I think it's going to come from a culmination of all the little bullshit that you were doing leading up to that. You know what I mean? Like the last project that I did, Flyering, it was almost a year and a half of not getting anything on paper, and then I got into an argument with someone at work doing a stupid survival job that I hated, and out came this like 60-page thing that I shot with my buddy. You know what I mean? Like you just don't know where that inspiration is going to come from. So that's really, I like that. I like putting it in that perspective because it made me feel a little bit better about yesterday. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's good to acknowledge yourself for what you actually do. A lot of people don't focus on that. They're always focusing on what they didn't do. And if you ever read the book The Secret by Rhonda Burns, which is, you know, a pretty intense book. I mean, I mean, it's based on the whole concept that you get whatever you focus on. So if you're focusing on all the things that you're failing in or that you're not doing, you're going to get more of failure and not doing things. Whereas if you focus, you shift, even if you feel like you want to beat yourself up, you're like, no, I actually did these couple of things. You know, you're focusing on that, and then that kind of leads to like a more positive direction. So it's good advice, and I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you.
So let's see. The next question. My biggest challenge is being seriously considered as a young actor. See, a lot of these people who ask these questions are actually young actors who I spoke with recently. Being seriously considered as a young actor with little to no professional experience. I'm finding it difficult to build my resume with professional work, as it seems that you need professional work to get those jobs in the first place. How do you break into that cycle?
One thing at a time. I feel like that's a mentality that people feel like they can consume just get 5 credits in one sitting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like one thing, just focus on booking one thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, like even if it's a local, not knocking community theater, but like a community theater, you know, like a little thing like that. Like, you know, do workshops, go to classes, like do things like that, because you're gonna meet actors, and you're gonna meet people that you're gonna want to collaborate with. Sorry, I'm trying not to. Jesus. Yeah, you're gonna meet people, and that's, you know, people. I think people also have a very skewed, I think it's skewed, perception of networking. Like it's somehow this like thing where, you know, networking is solely you being dropped into a social function in a bar and you're forced to introduce yourself to people and hand out a business card and explain your elevator pitch, and then you have to listen to them. And that's not, yes, that is a part of it, but networking is finding a tribe and finding a community, and you know, finding a theater company, finding an acting class, finding a studio where you're gonna go through it with people, and then you never know what's gonna come of it. You never know if you get paired up with like a scene partner in an acting class, and you go, oh man, I want to do this play. Let's figure out how we could produce this play, or let's write something together. Or let's do this thing together. I think those are the things that actors in that position tend to overlook, because they're so concerned with gaining as many credits as possible so they can go to this thing and then blah, blah, blah. And they're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
You know, do more work. I get like you just got out of 4 years of college, you're in student debt, you've been studying for whatever, but there's a difference between being in a company in college and doing acting in college and being with the same people for a few years than doing like real world acting classes. And I'm not downplaying college acting classes, but I'm saying that, you know, you're going to get into it with people and you're going to find a community and finding a home. And that's so valuable, and that's contagious. Success like that is contagious. You know, like it lifts you up more than, you know, I think.
Awesome.
That's my advice.
Just out of curiosity, do you feel something that I've sort of noticed a little bit, and I'd be curious to hear your perspective as an acting coach. I'm a filmmaker myself. I studied at NYU film school and stuff, and I've done like 2 feature films that I've cast for. And I find that for some reason, when I'm casting people who are sort of like, actually, regardless of the age, I find that actors who are just out of college or high school or whatever, for some reason, maybe it's just because of what they were acting in while they were in school, but I'll be casting for the role of like a police officer or something, and a young looking kid who's like a college age person will come to try, or will like submit to the audition. And I'll get like lots of these people who are too young for the part, or they don't match up. Do you feel like that's sort of a problem, like a misconception or something that like actors, especially like right out of college, because they've played like much older roles in their projects, like in their theater projects and stuff there, that they for some reason don't realize that, like, you know, once you're out there for real, you're not going to have a chance of getting anything that is older like than you look?
Yeah, film is a visual medium. You know, I used to just submit for everything, even stuff that I feel like I wasn't 100% right for, just to see what would stick. And I would say only submit for what you feel you're right for. And if you think, you know, like, oh, I played a cop in college, but I'm 21 and they're calling for a 30-year-old cop. Hold on a second. I think that'll not piss off a casting director, but it might be off-putting to see an actor submitting to stuff that they're clearly not right for.
Yeah.
I don't think it does you a service. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, again, it's a patience in what comes your way that you are correct for. And I totally was guilty of doing that when I was, you know, that age. And like now, I mean, I now I have an agent, I have somebody who submits for me now, but like, I still do self-submit for certain things, and I will always make sure that it's not something that's out of me. I don't submit for college kids anymore as much as I want to. I just can't, you know, it's just what this is, you know. And I think that, you know, back to just in my class, like, that's something that is very important to me, is embracing the visual, you know, the visual medium that is film, and embracing what it is that you are bringing to it, and celebrating you and your personality and all the wonderful little nuances that you bring to a certain character.
Awesome. I want to jump back for a second to networking and connecting, which we were just talking about. We have a question on that, and it's basically, this person says, my problem is my own introverted nature. I'm terrible at networking and connecting. On top of being an introvert, I'm painfully shy and socially awkward. I'm not good at reaching out or asking for help to further myself. I hold on to a belief that my talent will push me forward, but unfortunately, I don't think that's how the world reacts. As an actor, you have to sell and market yourself, but I've never been good at it. So like, what would your recommendation be, if you have any, for people who feel like they're very introverted and shy?
Take more classes and do everything that you can to get yourself out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do workshops, do things that terrify you. You know, like I said, like, there are very rare occurrences where you are going to be dropped into a situation where you're walking around alone in a room full of strangers, handing out business cards, talking up your whatever. And even if you do strike up a conversation, it's kind of off-putting when all somebody wants to talk about is how great they are and what their brand is. It's a social business, just like anything else. It's building relationships through common ground, not like, you know, you don't walk up to someone and shake their hand like, I'm talented, I could play a cop, I can do a Russian accent, my name is Billy. You know, like that's not the way it works. And I feel like that's a misconception of what networking is. Networking is immersing yourself in communities and building relationships, and just don't be a dick. I don't know. Like that's, you know, yeah, your talent will push you forward more than I mean, I don't want to say more than anything because I do feel like there are some talentless people who have caught a few better breaks than others. Um, but yeah, just do things. Take classes. I can't emphasize that enough, and I'm not doing that just to promote my class.
Yeah.
I swear. No, I mean, like, take other classes outside of mine. Take a diction class. Take a I don't know, take a singing lesson, do a workshop, take a dance course. Like, do those types of things. Like, you're going to meet like-minded people, and that's how you build your tribe, and that's how you build your community, and that is networking.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I think that that's really, really, really good advice. One actor who I interviewed a couple weeks ago said that she thought of networking as connecting and making friends rather than like networking, because she has the negative connotation of networking. And so, you know, if you're doing this, you're taking these classes and you're connecting and making friends, what would be, like, how does an actor go about effectively staying in touch with people? Because, you know, you're going to meet so many different people and stuff. And do you recommend any like software or scheduling, or what do they do to kind of like keep on top of that and not just keep on like, you know, going from one class to the next and becoming friends with new people and sort of like letting the old friends like slip through the cracks? Like, how do you check that?
I mean, I feel like it now is easier than ever to stay connected with people. Like, you just friend them on Facebook. Hey, do you mind if I friend you on Facebook? I mean, it's becoming, it's like, I have like 5 business cards in my wallet that have just been sitting there. And whenever I give it to someone, I'm like, I'm never going to hear from that person again. They're not going to take out my business card now. It's like, yeah, I mean, with social media, it's made things easier to just stay connected. As awful as social media has been for our psyche and our country and our like just everything in general, the last 10 years, the human race is just imploding. But I do feel like in this industry, you know, I mean, I have so many different like Facebook groups dedicated to like classes, like, or just like communities that I was a part of, or even like specific, like at the studio where I take acting classes, there are like specific, like Monday, Wednesday night class has a Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And they, you know, even if it's a supportive environment, or if it's like, hey, I have a show tonight. Hey, I have this. If you guys can come, that would be great. Hey, I'm having a game night, or whatever. Like, that'll just come organically. And if you're a decent person to be around, you're a good person to work with, like, people respond to that. So, like, to the introverted people who are shy, like, I mean, seeing people like that break out of their shells in those types of environments are like the best thing that happens to those, you know, groups. You know what I mean? Like, does that answer your question? I might have gone on a tangent there.
No, I mean, it's definitely, it's definitely interesting. I think that, you know, I think that all this stuff is spot on. It's like giving different perspectives. You know, whenever you're networking with people, you're bringing your own perspective, but it is important to sort of have like your own personality and be genuine to yourself. You know, like we were talking earlier about like how people see you and your type and everything. But you need to sort of like have your own, like you said, essence that you figure out and you hold on to, and you bring that into wherever you're going. So when people network with you and you're meeting people at classes and stuff, you're basically being yourself, and people can remember who you are. And I just feel like it makes you more memorable, because people sometimes think that they have to be someone or they have to act a certain way when they go to meet with people and stuff. So it is important, and you do have something different to offer when you go to places.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I was looking into this next question, which is just about SAG. We talked about it earlier, and so I made a note here. You were talking about like having joined SAG-AFTRA and all that, and just curious. I mean, I know that we're coming down like towards the end of the interview, but with the Screen Actors Guilds, how do you like determine when is the right time for an actor to join? Because there's a lot of like things to consider. You know, you don't want to like you don't have enough credits and suddenly you can't anymore act in non-union projects. You know, is it too early to join? What do you recommend, or do you have any thoughts on
I'll tell my story, and hopefully that'll be enough. So I did as much work as I could possibly do, and I did as much non-union work as I could possibly do.
Yeah.
Commercials, this is industrials, this is reenactment, this is everything. And I was getting to a place where I was starting to regularly, not regularly, somewhat regularly go in for TV. And I got a couple of callbacks here and there, and I didn't get anything. And then I booked The Deuce. And I had mentioned earlier that I was doing background work on another show, Quantico, actually, that I ended up being featured in a scene because I was one of the only guys on set who wasn't dicking around with their machine guns and taking selfies and whatever. Like, I just showed that, and again, that speaks to showing up on time, showing up prepared, not being a dick. Like, that's kind of how I got my waiver with that point. Anyway, and I booked it. I was ecstatic. I found out on a Thursday. The shoot was on a Wednesday. On Monday, I got a call from my agent saying that the production office got in touch with SAG. SAG got in touch with them, said that I'm a must join. And the choice was either I do the thing, and I bite the bullet, take out a credit card, pay the initiation fee, do the show, or turn down the show, keep auditioning for non-union work. And I feel like at that point, I had gotten to the gate. I had worked my way to the point where I was auditioning for TV regularly. I booked a thing on TV. To me, at that point, it was a no-brainer to join. Mm-hmm. That's after my resume had been built. I had gotten my credits. I had worked my ass off. I had gained a reputation. I had beat the streets. I did everything that I needed to do to where I felt comfortable knowing, like, okay, now there's no more non-union commercials. Now there's no more reenactments. That's over. I have to leave that behind. This is the leap that I'm taking. That's my story. I 100% stand by it. There is FICOR, which is a whole other conversation. I've considered it. I haven't done it. My advice would be, if you are not at a point where you are getting in the room consistently for SAG-AFTRA projects, then don't do it unless you absolutely have to. And if I didn't get my waivers for Quantico, I probably could have done that without joining. But it was just my time. Mm-hmm. Don't do it unless you know it's your time. Because there's nothing worse than like joining SAG for whatever reason that you have without any credits and then having to build your way up just doing SAG. That is so much more difficult. So much more difficult. So yeah, wait till your time comes. It's fucking expensive. Like it's a lot of money. It's $3,500 to join. I had to I luckily got my tax return the day before, and then I had to take out a credit card to cover the rest. Like, that's how last minute under the gun I was. And then, you know, I did two days on the Deuce, and that paid off most of it. I don't recommend just jumping in the first opportunity you get joining just to say that you're SAG, because really it's using the baseball analogy. If you're not at least in AAA, like you're not ready for the show just yet. And that's not a knock on your talent. It's just, you don't want to put yourself in a position to where you literally can't get any work because you don't have the credits and you're not being seen from the.
Once you're doing SAG-AFTRA projects, they mostly care about credits, or if you're like best friends with the producer or something, you know, it's like really, really challenging to get that type of work. So, you know,
is. And also, like, the amount of auditions that I was going out for dropped to, like, I would say, let's stay with the theme of 80%. Like, because I was going on 2 or 3 non-union commercial auditions a week, and I had to say goodbye to that, and I was okay with it. You know, all those like industrials that I was making a lot of money just being like an office guy and an industrial stuff. Like, that all was gone. So that was the risk that I take, and that was the investment that I made in myself. So
Now, this question that I have is just kind of a spin-off question from that. It's about the amount of time that it took you to get to that point. Not like any actors listening this should be aware that obviously the time frame is going to vary and can vary immensely. But what do you feel like in terms of years is just a general ballpark that actors could expect to be like they should be staying non-union until they get. Again, I know that it can totally vary. It could be like a year or like 20 years, but you know, is there a general amount?
I don't, I don't, I mean, I think that might be an unanswerable question, only because, you know, you can be, you can graduate from a thing and then something gets you in the door for something big and then you book it right away. You know what I mean? Like, that happens. I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think actors sometimes are just curious, like, you know, how long does it usually take? Is it like, you know, 3 or 4 years that they're going to be looking at? Because sometimes people are like, well, if I, like some people who might not have any idea might be like, oh, if I could get some really good credits and, you know, get in less than a year and start doing big stuff, but that's very rare. So what I want is for people to have sort of like a realistic sense of like on the average, like it's probably recommended for at least like 4 to 5 years or something before you're really working full consistently and doing a lot of work, assuming that you put your dues in. People shouldn't expect to, like, you know, oh, being an actor is easy. You know, it's something that takes a lot of time and they have to have like realistic expectations. So do you have any like thought on amount of time, saying that they're like a very consistent, hardworking actor and they're willing to, you know, put in the effort required?
Well, I mean, with, like, I personally don't think. I mean, for me, it was like a year and a half of grinding, but I quit my job.
Yeah.
I accumulated debt so I can dedicate myself fully to it. That's my story. Somebody else, it could be 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think the best advice that I can give is don't do it until they ask you.
That's a good point. I like that.
Just wait for them to come to you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Because producers will hire a non-union actor for a union project. Non-union producers won't hire a SAG actor. Some people do. There are not loopholes, but there are people who break the rules. But it's easier for a non-union actor to get a union job than vice versa.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then you're putting yourself at risk if you join SAG, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally. It's definitely a risk, you know, when you're doing stuff that could get you kicked out after you spent $3,500.
Sure.
All right. Well, I honestly think that, you know, all the information and stuff that we've covered in this interview is very, very helpful. There's been some really cool tips and tricks that we talked about. There's been some eye-opening information. People learned, like, you know, how you did it, how long it took you and stuff. So first off, I want to thank you for that, but I also wanted to ask, like, is there anything that you want to finish up by saying? Any last thing that you want to cover for a minute or two?
No, I mean, you know, I talking about it, I feel kind of inspired, and just patience.
What's your plan from here?
Well, my film, my series is now starting to make the rounds in like the film festival circuit, so I'm really excited about that. I'm in a new round of on-camera classes. I'm teaching those. I'm taking the month of August to not take on any survival work. I've made that promise to myself. to focus on writing and focus on business.
Nice.
And I will take your 80-20 advice. It's really awesome.
Okay.
I appreciate that. And, you know, having faith that what I'm putting into it will be returned to me. And it's, I know that, God, especially for actors, it can feel so bleak so often when, you know, you're not getting that C-mail notification and you're not getting, you know, or you see like a part on TV that you know that you could have played, you didn't get auditioned for. And it's easy to get sucked into that toxic, why not me kind of mentality. And I think that, and I'm myself included, I do fall victim to this all the time. But I think the best thing to just hammer home is community, persistence, and you know, having an understanding of the essence that you put out there that the casting directors and producers on the other side of the table do say. And that, you know, I mean, you're in the headshot business. That's very crucial in marketing yourself for your own headshots. You know, I mean, that to me is that's something you do get from community. You know, like you do get from like, hey guys, 3 actors that you remind me of, or 3 words to describe me. You know, like that kind of thing. Those things are really important, and that comes with collaborating with people. And write your own shit. Write your own shit. If you feel like you're not getting cast in what you want to cast, write what you want to get cast in, and fucking raise some money on Indiegogo. You got fucking 10 ants that are wondering why you're not on Broadway yet. Say, all right, give me $100 to shoot this thing. You know.
No, that's awesome. I love that advice. You know, you're saying like, you know, get your marketing materials right so you're presenting yourself properly. Then just start networking, and then create your own stuff and get yourself, you know, doing things. So you're not just kind of like sitting around focusing on the negative. And I think that's awesome.
You mentioned The Secret. The universe responds to stuff like that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, this was amazing. I really appreciate your time. I'm very excited about this interview. Thank you very much for answering these questions. Real questions from real actors and answers from real actors. So I really appreciate it. All right.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate your doing this.
Yeah.